Welcome to the third Arabian Sport and Sponsorship Forum here at the world famous Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi. As part of this year's forum, we've invited across one of the world's leading academics from the United States, Professor Bettina Cornwell from the University of Oregon. This is as part of our Future Vision initiative for the forum this year, which is about hopefully inspiring you, the next generation, to consider careers within the worlds of sport, sponsorship and sports marketing. We hope you enjoy this interview with Bettina, particularly for those of you that can't make the forum tomorrow, and we look forward to hearing your feedback along the way. Bettina, mahaba to Abu Dhabi. It's great to have you back here for the third Arabian Sport and Sponsorship Forum. Obviously we're in a pretty unique place here of Yas Marina Circuit, the home of the Etihad Airways Abu Dhabi Formula One Grand Prix. And we'd like to just talk to you about sponsorship. As part of the forum, we have a Future Vision initiative, which is about helping look at the next generation of leaders within the sports marketing and sponsorship industry here. And we'd like to gain from your knowledge of sponsorship and sports marketing and your research and studies over the years to talk about the world.
Thank you. It happens to be one of my favorite topics. So.
That's exactly what we need. So obviously, starting straight up, define sponsorship.
Straightforwardly, it's some value that's exchanged between a sponsoring entity, an organization, a firm, and a property, a rights holder, oftentimes sport.
And obviously in today there are lots of different types of sponsorship, so it ranges between, there's obviously event sponsorship, there's media sponsorship, there's athlete sponsorship, and obviously the impact of the digital age in that. Often the industry actually finds it difficult to define where sponsorship should sit within a business.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I take another definition that I developed to serve my own purposes, admittedly, and I talk about it as sponsorship linked to marketing. So it kind of gives away what department I think it should be in. And with that, I think sponsorship linked marketing is all of the orchestration around the event, the athlete, the sponsored property that makes that a marketing platform. And it's all of that orchestration that is marketing. And so my top choice would be marketing. Now, having said that, I will admit readily that you find sponsorship in journalism and in sport management, you find it in business schools, you find it under the CEO, beside the CEO, as a personal assistant.
And I think that's a very interesting mix, because I think looking at different organisations that we've come across over the years, sponsorship does sit in different departments of an organisation. So you can have the CEO's office oversees sponsorship. And the pros and cons of that, as opposed to the marketing department or the commercial division, even the HR and CSR and community side of things.
And the sponsorship takes over that demeanor. It takes on that persona from the area in which it sits.
And is that partly about the flexibility of sponsorship that it provides that, in your view, or is that?
I think it's the flexibility, but it also has to do with the fact that it's a fledgling area in some ways. It's newer. It's not as established as marketing, but it certainly is part of it.
What are your favourite examples of great brands doing sponsorship and how they've used sponsorship to grow their business and grow their brand?
Well, as you know, I'm right down the street at the University of Oregon from Nike. Their headquarters is in Beaverton. In Beaverton, Oregon, not that far away, and we see a lot of what they're doing. It's really a fun campaign that they have right now with the Find Your Fast. They've had great campaigns before, Find Your Greatness, and you remember the ubiquitous Just Do It. And all of those have sponsorship heavily integrated.
And that's the key, isn't it, in terms of to have the brand campaign linked to the sponsorship, so that the sponsorship becomes brighter and shinier because it's on brand.
Yeah, in my opinion, one of the hallmarks of what they do well is to integrate their endorsements, their relationships with their advertising, and at the same time leave that feeling with you that it's really not about product, it's about your own performance.
Right. obviously, perhaps the greatest personalisation that was originally Michael Jordan, effectively followed by Tiger, and then the current ambassadors, including Rory McIlroy, is playing this week actually,
Mo Farah, yeah,
and Mo Farah and others
nice.
Along the way. They've done that brilliantly. But and what about other brands in other sectors? Are there any other personal favourites?
Personal favourites. I was living in Australia when the decision to take the Melbourne Cup came with Emirates,
Yeah.
and that was such a nice combination. It was market entry strategy, but at the same time it combined the horse racing tradition of the two countries, and there was a lot that was clever in what they did.
Yeah, they have the Emirates obviously is a great brand, used their colour incredibly well in terms of being very innovative within that. And what in terms of other airlines, obviously we've got Etihad here in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah,
I
think
time
they're a bit
of the
more
cycle.
junior than Emirates, but you see them taking a nice profile as well. Distinctive, yet still using sponsorship to their advantage.
It's interesting when you come back to the Emirates piece, you have Red Bull and Emirates both started at the same time. What are your thoughts on the Red Bull campaigns that they've done over the years?
Again, clever. They made unique and different sports and really non-sports, if you will, into the fabric of their brand, and other brands followed. Mountain Dew, taken off the shelf as a dusty brand and made alive again through action sports. There have been a lot of interesting stories coming from how one becomes one with a sport.
And I think it's also about how one activates the sponsorship, and that's an interesting area which particularly the likes of all the names you've just talked about have done incredibly well. That they've they've been at the cutting edge of whatever the marketing industry is of the digital piece. You only have to look at the Red Bull channel today and how unique it is. And for example, this week I think we hear a Formula One car in the background here at Gas.
Nice.
But actually, that brings to mind obviously this week or last week actually they did they took one of their Formula One cars on a mountain in I think it was Austria effectively, and that's been planted on news channels worldwide effectively. Tell us about the selection process of sponsorship and the challenges involved with that, because I know that in the world that we're in today, you have some interesting views on the challenges that exist there for a brand and a sponsor to find the right partnership.
Indeed. What are the challenges? Presuming that you've activated your sponsorship and leveraged it adequately, because that's probably the first challenge. But presuming that that's happened, then it's oftentimes, if you're making a new decision, a new selection, how does that go together with your brand? And historically that's been about fit or match. And I would argue that fit or match is not what brands need to focus on these days. It's actually authenticity. And it's a bit different. Running event is fit and it can fit, but these days that's a very crowded space, and as well as you fit, so does your direct competitor.
Right.
So selection now I think needs to orient to, is this and can it be built as a very genuine, authentic relationship?
And do you think that can be slightly different from when you look at okay, I get the authenticity piece because that's that is definitely the best of all worlds, but you can almost take the opposite end of the spectrum as well and do something where maybe the outset is that there isn't necessarily a perfect fit, but the execution brings together that it's into the that's brought in the right way and there is a fit from that point of view.
Exactly.
Because it might be that the messaging is appropriate along the way.
So being more comfortable with taking a relationship that doesn't quote unquote fit, but that can be made authentic and developed into an authentic relationship.
Right.
And that'll be better for memory too. It's not in a crowded space, and so you have some unique relationship that when you articulate that, people are able to think back on it.
And in terms of the mistakes that you've seen over the years as sponsorship, where are the main areas of mistakes that you think exist?
Actually, it was And when I was writing the last book, I called them sins, measurement sins, because there's so many of them. But sins are, mainly in measurement, in my opinion, that people develop sponsorships or they buy into them and they don't track how that's gone. And there's so many different kinds of measurement sins. Neglect, just don't do it, or over measuring in terms of measuring things that are convenient, and not digging deep to learn what it is you need to know about how this worked.
See, measurement's an interesting one for our industry in terms of as an agency, because naturally it sort of pays the bills because you want to show a natural ROI. So the industry is always trying to strive for one size fits all, and ultimately, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that in terms of, ROI is something that needs to be analysed, but surely ROI is about, the original sponsor deciding at the outset what they want to achieve from it at the end of the day, and that can be very simple, or it can be multi-layered and more complex.
True enough, one size does not fit all, and as much as there's ROI, there should be ROO, return on objectives. And the thing, though, what you'd like to get back to, in my opinion, is measurement then allows you evaluation, especially when you have a portfolio. So I am able to come back to some similar metric and have a discussion about how all of the sponsorships in a portfolio performed.
Right.
We need to know what we keep and what we lose. And that means you need some measurement that has some common metric, even if it is an ROO metric.
Right. And that's presumably, though, that's something obviously that exists in the marketing industry. Obviously, we often take a media metric because that's where
it's
traditionally that's where everyone feels comfortable. So that it was in a previous era more about the media metrics.
It was all about it, wasn't it?
It was all about it, 100%. But now it's become more rounded along the way. I mean, is it something that, this is, this whole area, how do you see it evolving in future years? Is it something where it's just about the brand and their specific outlook, or is there more that can be done in research to help brands to evaluate their investments?
I really do believe new metrics are coming online. We're developing this authenticity thinking with a new metric there, a new measure, so you can not only understand what it is in terms of authenticity, but then which aspects you're performing well in and which aspects you maybe want to improve.
Right. Yeah. I mean, authenticity is again, I know this is something that's part of your research, is that a challenge in this day and age of the authenticity piece is, being innovative in the authenticity. Everything's been done. In some respects, everything's been sponsored.
Absolutely.
And you might spot a new venue that's being built or go and create a new event. But any thoughts and advice on brands going into sponsorship to replace another brand and the challenges that unfold there? Yeah.
So because everything's been sponsored before, you run into the challenge of the old sponsor being recalled. So you don't want to rebadge activities, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, especially if that wheel is already associated with your direct competitor. So to go in, think fresh, and be very focused on what it is that you'd like to come away with as that point of differentiation. And that requires commitment and maybe not doing everything you'd like to do, and doing a few things, sort of more intensively.
Being attacked there by it's an Abu Dhabi fly having a go at you. It's one where that whole area of how a sponsor replaces another sponsor is, I think we always recommend that obviously there's about the strategy and it's particularly about the initial impact for the strategy and making sure that you've got a very focused plan of how to bring that alive. So
as I remember, you did a very clever thing in Australia on that too, with the stadium.
Well, it was our client Etihad
Yeah.
and Etihad Stadium, obviously what was previously the Telstra Dome.
The dome,
the
changing
dome,
it. Mhm.
and it was changing it effectively, and then changing the experience of it, adding value, because obviously from a tourism point of view, it would come in there, and how you could do that. It's something that's an important part of, originally everybody said, oh, you can't change the name. I would say now, whatever it is, it's, Etihad are, in something like their 9th year of that, of that partnership. Maybe it's their 8th actually, but it's now Etihad Stadium, and they've achieved that from what was a very powerful brand, Telstra at the time, that was sponsoring multiple stadia, and how they've been able to do that. So it's partly about the strategy going in and the commitment, because it's that's the bit. If you don't have the commitment and the strategy, commitment often meaning activation dollars, then it's very difficult to to move the dial effectively and to get your right piece of it.
But it was very clever using not only the name change from Telstra to Etihad, but also that change from dome to stadium.
Yeah, I think that was the bit. Thank you. Next time I need a reference, actually, I'll get you to help me with that. Okay, so in terms of some of the likely trends of sponsorship in 2016, one of the key, obviously, social media has changed the world. Full stop. Sport is, I believe, the number 2 passion or pastime, in the social media digital world.
What's number 1?
I love. Let's leave it at that, Bettina.
All right.
So that it's something where from that whole perspective of sport, the social media is allowing, digital platforms are allowing sport to be,
in your pocket,
analysed and researched in a very different way,
Yeah.
and engaged. And that's where, from a brand point of view, that one of the biggest challenges is being authentic in that area.
Yeah.
But this is a trend that's building, right now, effectively. Still, it's constant evolution. But what do you see as other trends within sponsorship over the next 12 months?
So, one thing you're going to see more of, and you may call it sport, you may call it something else, but I think you'll see more esports in the coming year, because it has a demographic, and esports has also amazing, already existing digital content, which a lot of other areas have to create. That's their sweet spot. I believe you're going to see more B2B sponsorship for obvious reasons that B2B has woken up to sponsorship, but also because B2B relationships offer a new advantage in the cluttered marketplace. So a lot of brands have had to paint themselves in with exclusivity in multi-layers and multi-kind of siloed aspects of sponsorship, venues, athletes, events. And when they have had a main sponsor and they change out and they have to seek a new sponsor, they have a space cleared away and clean for that main sponsor, and then that is the only space that's clear and clean where they can bring something in. And so they're looking for areas where they don't have these conflicts of exclusivity, and B2B works. It can go and slot into places that would have been difficult, for other brands.
I think that's one where, funnily enough, F1 is a great example of that. Actually, that F1 and the B2B area that they've developed over the years, is they've done a brilliant job on, both the networking and the introductions that sponsorship can facilitate, and then the new business opportunities. I always remember my early days at IMG, in actual fact, with Mark McCormack, and meeting Jackie Stewart for the first time, who was one of the great networkers of that, and that was actually his core proposition. His core proposition of his Formula One team was the introductions that at the time Stewart Racing could facilitate, and could win business for people. I think that's it's an interesting area that's still something that's likely growing. I think you're right that ultimately sponsors want more value, and in the commercial area that's one there. As a final thought, tomorrow we've actually got Steve Nuttall, who's the head of EMEA for Google YouTube, effectively within sport, and it's a really interesting area there of
Totally.
how we're all watching, YouTube. It was meant to be the second screen. It's going to be becoming more and more the primary screen. How do you? I mean, obviously in the States, you're ahead of the game in some respects compared to everybody else in that area. How do you see that evolution? It's an interesting one with TV rights, isn't it? Of where does that begin and end from the point of view of the rights holder? Of Olympics have got their YouTube channel. Their major funding is the TV deal. The TV companies want to use the YouTube channels. What are some headline thoughts on that?
I was trying to write a headline thought just yesterday, and it was something along the lines of the thing that practitioners want to know most about, but know the least about, is how to manage that new landscape, that new media landscape. It's very challenging. I think we're going to have to look more into what does streaming rights mean, and whose content is it? It's the lawyers are going to be involved. And
lawyers are always going to be busy. They always keep themselves busy, that's for certain.
But it's really exciting. It's really fun, and there's so many more ways to connect. It's just a matter of sorting it and being involved. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. I think it's probably about being innovative and creating it and trying some things as well along the way for the different brands in the right way. And actually from a production point of view, making sure they can produce their own production and manage their own production of the content along the way.
It'll be interesting with contracts that are already in existence and new contracts, how that can be managed.
Bettina, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed for coming all the way to Abu Dhabi from Oregon to the
to the fresh air and sunshine.
That's the good news, actually. I believe it's a little bit colder in Oregon at the moment, but we thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
We're looking forward to hearing you talk and help lead some of the discussions tomorrow.
Super.
Thank you.
We're making this film today because some people will not be able to attend the Arabian Sport and Sponsorship Forum tomorrow. We wanted to introduce the ideas that we'll be covering there and to talk a little bit about why the sponsorship forum is so important. There are criticisms that academic life is siloed from business, and this is one of those places where a bridge is being built between academic research, academicians, universities, and the sport industry and practitioners.